Well, Chief Inspector, I believe it is your turn for Corona story time and the adventures of Drake and McTrowell, the Bavarian Airship Regatta.
Okay. Oh, I like this chapter. This is a great one.
You did write it. just saying.
This one's called A Pretty Face. Erasmus looked up from his note and glanced at Sparky's identical note. May I accompany you to Lord Ashley's cabin? He asked Dr. McTrowell with a slight smile. I'd be delighted, Sparky replied. Erasmus retrieved his cane from the nearby wall where he had left it, and putting a well-mannered crook in his left arm, offered it to Sparky. She slid her right hand in, and they proceeded towards the main passageway, walking a bit slower than they would normally on their own, lingering in the moment. Once inside the passageway, the 14 doors within the hall faced them. But which is Lord Ashley's? Erasmus wondered. 2 steps in, and Reginald Wallace's booming voice could be heard emanating from cabin 1. He was clearly doing business with Lord Ashley by dominating the conversation. Erasmus didn't understand how that worked precisely, but it seemed to be a universal trait of those in command of industrial endeavors. One more step, and Virat opened the door to cabin 2. In a crisp but inviting manner.
Okay, that wasn't so crisp.
With a small sweep of his hand, he offered up 2 cushioned chairs visible from the doorway, both draped in dark green fabric. As they entered the cabin, it became apparent the care Virat had taken to transform the teak and brass cabin into a sitting room worthy of Lord Ashley. Virat had converted the daybed into a magnificent couch, decorated with green, mustard, and burgundy striped pillows.
You look nothing like a pillow, dear.
And the cover was a shiny blue overlay that looked silky and luxurious, complete with braided gold-yellow fringe tassels on the outer edge. Both Sparky and Erasmus raised their eyebrows at the sight. A door in the room apparently led to Lord Ashley's private chamber. They settled into the offered chairs, Erasmus's cane laid once again against the nearby wall. Virat appeared with a steaming silver pot hovering over a tea set on the small table between the chairs. The gesture was both an offer and a question. Virat looked first at Sparky, who simply nodded yes. A decisive pour, and he filled her cup with the light brown liquid, steamy and creamy. She recognized it as the same formulation of chai that she had had before. Virat looked at Erasmus, and he also nodded in approval. Virat dispensed another cup without a word. Virat disappeared into the adjoining room, the door clicking quietly shut. Sparky and Erasmus lifted their cups and politely raised them to each other before taking sips. Sparky broke the silence. Are you familiar with Indian chai? It was new to me just a few days ago. Actually, no, but I hated the thought of you sitting here sipping it alone. It is a potent brew with these infused spices. I could smell them on the first pour. He was desperately trying not to ask her why Lord Ashley might have invited him here, not wanting to look curious or uninformed. Perhaps a different line of conversation would help in getting there. Have you been working with Mr. Wallace for a long time? He seems quite the character. A number of years, but to be honest, he talks so much about himself throughout dinner, I'm sure he hopes that everyone aboard is discussing him. May I suggest that we talk about something else? I'm intrigued by your cane. You obviously don't need it in an aid for walking. Does it have some sentimental value? Erasmus had spent his life giving away very little information about himself, that he felt caught between telling her everything or nothing at all. How did she do that? Actually, it just added a little bit of protection. I just do not feel fully safe empty-handed. So the cane is something to have in my hands when trouble arises. I hope that is not too ungentlemanly. He looked for a negative reaction that never came, so he continued. I often deal with the rougher side of society. Having a hand up is important. I had assumed as much, she continued with her general interrogation, but it's a bit ornate. I had expected a story along the lines of a present or an heirloom. Erasmus thought that he might as well finally tell his tale. He took a deep breath and got out 2 words. Well, The cabin door sprang open and Lord Ashley glided in. I'm terribly sorry to have kept you waiting. I'm so pleased to see that you are both accepted my invitation. He moved graciously to the couch and sat gently upon it. Just as he sat down, Farad appeared from the other room, poured his master a cup of chai, and then disappeared again into the other room. Lord Ashley continued, I have been looking forward to this all week. Erasmus welcomed the interruption. After years of keeping his past behind him, he couldn't imagine how this young lady from the Americas had him almost blurted out without much more than a simple query. Erasmus thought, momentarily, how a pretty face had come close to loosening his tongue. Well,
Thank you for joining us for Corona Storytime and Drake McTrowell's Bavarian Airship Regatta. We'll see you next time.